Hey everybody, Fishman here. Welcome to another video. I really do need to stop telling you guys what I'm going to be doing in upcoming videos because it always seems to change. In this particular case, a couple things came up. The most important one, of course, is the large U-shaped paludarium that I'm putting together is going to be on not so much hold, but it's going to be postponed slightly. We are currently in a lockdown that they seem to want to extend and extend again, so I don't really want to have that up and running with livestock in it. And then, of course, not have access to it because it'll just create problems, and I'm trying to time it so that hopefully it'll be up and running with fish and everything in it about the same time as they're going to have people returning to the center. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you remember, I was doing the dollar store builds and I had put together, well, we'll call it a filter. It was a little cascading thing that I had put together from a rotating desktop organizer. And it looked okay, but if you remember, I had to dial the pump all the way down to 0 and then stuff a bunch of sponges in the input pipe just to slow down the flow sufficiently that it just wouldn't overflow everywhere. So while I was doing that, I was thinking that, well, it would be much better to make one that can handle a lot more flow. First off, you get to see the cascading more, and secondly, of course, it would be better as a filter. So that's what we're going to do here today. I'm going to put together a cascading filter that is going to be able to handle the entire output from that pump. A couple benefits to that. First off, there won't be any backup pressure, and we won't shorten the longevity of the pump. And the other thing is we're going to have nice, big, obvious cascades, ones that you don't have to go hunting through Java Moss to find, and it won't be a little trickle. It'll be nice and big. Now, I'm not going to fill this up with media today because I do want your input on a couple of things once we get closer to the end of this. So I'm going to save that for later, and you guys can help me figure out what to do with this. Now, the other thing you'll notice is this is not hexagonal. The reason for that is time constraints. I could have done the miter cuts to make this hexagonal and have it spiral down as the other one did, but I still actually have to put together a fair amount of materials that are going to go in. First off, the large U-shaped paludarium, and also I got a call today that I had to go out and check on a client I hadn't seen the aquarium for in well over a year, pretty much since this all started. They've been shut down, and I recorded what the tank looked like, and I am going to be showing that to you guys in an upcoming video because I am now going to also be getting that one retrofitted, and pretty much the pump's burnt out and everything's just, you'll see what I mean when you actually get to see the build itself. It all needs to be redone. Now you'll notice here that this is wobbly, and believe it or not, that had been put on the lathe. But the thing I had done, here I put it back on the lathe and you can see I got rid of the wobble. I was sanding these. I left it in the lathe and I did a little sanding on it just to take the edges off, mostly just for be able to handle it without having sharp edges. And I guess while I was doing that, I had taken a bit too much off and created a wobble. And as you see, it's no big deal just to pop it back on the lathe and get that out. Now these are the three main partitions. These are going to be the internal ones, where the water is going to cascade over. And the best way of making sure that they're all exactly the same length is to cut them all exactly at the same time, because when you're using methylene chloride to weld acrylic together, it doesn't handle gaps at all. It needs to be precisely the same dimensions. So especially with internal cuts like that, they all actually have to be really, really close together in their actual dimensions. Now what I'm doing here is I've set up my mill and I'm drilling through the holes. These are the holes that the cascades are going to go over, but I measure them all, or drilling I should say, all from one edge, which is this side here, and that way I can put each of the other two on here, and that way the height of, well, how much the water is going to be above will be equal for all of them. And that way we'll get, as it turns out, 4 cascades for each one, and they're all going to be identical. So I had thought while I was doing this to alter the positions, stagger the holes where they are, but unfortunately I was a little too concerned, and again I didn't have much time to fiddle with this too much, if they were all, ever so slightly different in height, it would change how this ended up looking. So I decided to make them all the same. There are ways of altering how the water actually flows over these things as we progress, but for the moment they're all just going to go down straight. Again, these things are not necessarily carved in stone. They can be changed actually after things are fully built, depending on how you want to arrange the internals. One of the most finicky aspects of putting something like this together is these internal baffles. They need to be as close to parallel as possible, because the thing about your eye is when you see something that's all by itself, it's rather difficult to figure out whether it's perfectly square or not, because there's nothing really to reference it by. But because there's going to be 3 or 4 of these panels right beside each other, you're going to be able to tell if one of them is slightly out of alignment. And I had to take a little bit of extra time here and ensure that these went together, first off, so that they will hold water, and secondly, so that they look like they are where they belong. The first one wasn't as difficult as the others because I have that nice standpipe there to hang on to, and it was quite easy to hold this first off vertical, true as 90 degrees from the bottom, and then I had set the set square here so that I can do the rest of it. This one was pretty good. The next 2 are going to be freestanding until I weld them in place. So what I did for those is I cut 2 parallels. They're just out of, well, here you go. This is 1/8 inch acrylic. And I actually, first off, picked a dimension that I thought was okay. And then I put them up like this and tested it out to see what it looked like. And then I actually shaved them down, I think twice, until I got a nice visual as far as when you look at it, whether or not your eye sees everything the way it should be. And then because there's 2 of them like this, I can put one near the bottom and get that relatively in position, and then I can put the vertical in here like this to make sure it's 90 degrees. So that was actually quite good. Now, unfortunately, when I went to this one here, I wasn't able to do that because, the only thing holding this in place at all is that little bit of a weld in the bottom that hasn't quite set yet. So again, it was good enough for at this point to get the bottom parallel, and then when I flip it over here on the end like this, then I went and made sure that I could get them all actually vertical, so square to the bottom. It wasn't very difficult at all. Now again, if I had done this in hexagonal, it would have been a little bit more effort for sure. And like I said, I only had a day, actually pretty much just an afternoon to put this together, so I didn't have the kind of time that would take. Maybe in the future, if I get the time to do that, I will try doing a hexagonal build for this. So it's just a matter now of putting these, as you can see, I'm doing it just slightly lifted. That way they're being held together, nice and 90 degrees, but I'm not putting the acrylic that I'm using as a divider against the acrylic that hadn't quite set yet, and then welding that down to the bottom. This is a little bit more difficult here because there's so much in the way, but it was just a simple matter of tacking that in place, and then once it was set sufficiently, popping it on its end and setting it up more solidly. So it's getting quite close to the end here now. So you notice that there's a hole in the front, right there on the left, and the reason that that's there is obviously to return the water to the tank. And the standpipe that's going to go in that is not going to be welded in place at all. It is going to be a friction fit. So there'll be a bit of leakage around it. You'll see that when I get those running. Not important at all, even if I decide, depending on what you decide to do with this. But it needs to be adjustable so I can adjust the height. And then maybe after I've done that, what I could do is weld it in place if I don't like that little bit of drip. But there you go. It's pretty much done now. I just have to put the front on. Now, the reason why I'm not putting anything in this, there's a couple of options for this. First off, I can set it up different ways, so you guys can give me input on how you want this to be filtered, like with batten, with foam, sponge, gravel. Obviously, I think most people will want to see plants in this, that sort of stuff as well. But definitely that kind of thing will be greatly appreciated for seeing what kind of input you have. Now, the other reason why I haven't quite finished this off is I haven't done, well, just did a 14K giveaway, but I haven't really just done a spontaneous for no reason giveaway. So another possibility of this is if there's enough people interested in it, if they like the look of it or whatever, that I can have this as a giveaway. The only difference would be for those who are interested in it, I would have to have the postage paid for it, because it's going to be like somewhere $30, $40, $50 depending on where it's going to go for it to get there. Everything else obviously is free, so again, in the comments below, let me know what you think about that, and then we'll figure that out. So there you go, plugged it in, filling up, and it's going to fill up to the top layer in the back, and this is at full output. And remember, the other one was just spraying water everywhere at this point. This is not quite capable of handling the full flow, but it's very close, and this is, like I said, full on. And one other small thing that happened here, you'll see shortly as we can fill in the last chamber, which will be up here in a second. Because remember that tricky weld I told you about? Well, there you go, right on the left. I had missed a small section. But that's the nice thing about working with this at this point. Simple matter of unplugging it. And I had to use a clamp, of course, because most of the rest of it had set by then. And then just a matter of welding it again and putting it back together. You'll also notice a bit of drip up front, but that is something that needs to be adjusted later, again, depending upon what's going to happen with whoever wants this, or if you just want me to set it up in the shop. So definitely let me know which way you guys want to go on that, and like I said, if there's enough interest, I'll have a draw and give this away. Or I will set it up and have it run in the shop, depending upon, like I said, my fish room. Depending upon, like I said, who wants it to be more or whatever. We'll figure that out in the days to come. So there you go. Have a look at the lower left, as this fills up to the top. And like I said, it's very easy to fix that kind of thing. And the one in the middle I will adjust when we figure out what we're going to do with this. There you go. That weld is holding and there's no problem. And that's pretty much it. There you go. Cascading filter. And I like it much more like this because the extra flow is really kind of nice, and there are ways of putting in little deflectors and gravel and plants and logs and driftwood and all kinds of stuff as well to make that look less uniform, which is probably good as well. The other thing you'll notice is some of the water seems to be flowing at slightly different angles. Acrylic is weird that way. When it's first filled with water, it's kind of hydrophobic, so it does tend to bend where the water is going to go, but after it runs for a little while, it'll be fine. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and bye for now.